It's been this way for generations.
Dates in the Bible don't quite match the marriage certificate. Uh-oh.
And welcome, America, to America's family history show, Extreme Genes and ExtremeGenes.com. I am Fisher, your radio root sleuth, on the program where we shake your family tree and watch the nuts fall out. Well, it is great to have you aboard this week. We've got a couple of guests, one of them new, one of them old. The new one is Lindsay Fulton. She's from the New England Historic Genealogical Society and AmericanAncestors.org. And she's going to tell us about an amazing new society that's being put together based on the Boston Tea Party you might want to be a part of, because this year is the 250th anniversary. The second guest was actually recorded in 2021, and he just passed away last month. He is Pearl Harbor survivor Jack Holder. And this man had stories, and we wanted to make sure that you heard those stories again in light of his passing, because number one, he was a great storyteller. He was 101 years old. So Jack got his graduation in February, and you get to hear those stories today. Hey, it's time to check into Boston. Speaking of NEHGS, David Allen Lambert is standing by, the chief genealogist of the New England Historic Genealogical Society and AmericanAncestors.org. David, you had a huge find this week, and I think this is an amazing thing.
Well, you know, it's funny. I look for news stories. I never think I'm going to actually be part of one that might actually be worthwhile. What I've been doing for about the past year, Fish, is our local historical society, they don't have things microfilmed. They don't have things copied and duplicated. So I thought, well, I'll just take my cell phone and just start copying digitally and saving and backing them up on thumb drives. All sorts of 18th and 19th century records. Our 300th anniversary is coming up in a few years.
Okay. And you're talking about Stoughton, Massachusetts, your hometown.
I am talking about Stoughton, my hometown. It's founded back in 1726. So I've got thousands of records scanned, but I'm always looking for more. And I saw something that was like an old newspaper and saw something sticking out of it and pulled it out and folded up in quarters. Was the 1780 tax list for my town, which I've never seen before. Fish, I've been going there since I was 11 in 1980. And there's not many people who've been going there longer than me. So if I haven't seen it, nobody else has seen it.
So you were going through the archives there in Stoughton, and this is what you stumbled across. And they didn't even know they had it.
No, they didn't know they had it either.
But, you know, this kind of is in keeping with what we've talked about on the show many times, that archives, for wherever it may be, aren't always aware of what they have. So with the 1780 tax list, how many names are on there?
Oh, nearly 150, I would say.
Anybody you know?
Well, when you're a local town historian, you know everybody that's been dead for 200 years. So I'm like, oh, that's the captain of the militia, and that's the minister, and that's the widow so-and-so. And I'm reading it like a who is who, like I would if I was reading the phone book now.
Wow.
So, yeah, when you start studying names when you're 11 years old, they kind of get stuck like peanut butter in the roof of your mouth. They're always there.
There you go. Well, here's a call to the Boston Globe. Here's a good story with local ties that go way back. Nice find, Dave.
Thanks, Fish. Well, you know, I love our DNA stories we've shared over the years, and another one has surfaced, and not 75 years too late. A Canadian soldier over in England got a young lady pregnant, had a little girl, and that child was put up for adoption. Well, he's also over in the Netherlands a few months later and got another girl pregnant, and when she was born, she was put up for adoption. Well, thanks to DNA, they now are connected.
Yeah.
And these sisters have never met each other until just recently.
Isn't that cool? And they seem pretty excited about it, but there is a little bit of a language barrier because one speaks English, the other speaks Dutch.
Well, with DNA, they are definitely speaking the same genetic language.
That's true.
Well, as we were talking about World War II, the next story is kind of fun. It's the prisoner of war internment cards for 200,000 British and Commonwealth prisoners of war that were records that were kept by the Germans in the Second World War with the name, place of birth, rank, serial number, the whole 9 yards, including sometimes photographs of the actual prisoner of war. They haven't been digitized yet, but chances are I would think Ancestry and Find My Past are probably chomping at the bit to get this one.
Yeah.
And these are indexed and online. I found over 150 Lamberts. Not that I think any of them are my close cousins, but to show you how well it's indexed,
Sure.
and it gives the name and the date. So it's a great way to find kin over in the UK that may have been prisoner of war during the Second World War.
Great stuff.
Well, while I'm in England, I might as well dig a little deeper for you. And this time digging deep into the cemetery in Euston. When they put the HS2 railway station in London near Piccadilly, they had to move 50,000 burials. So the St. James Burial Ground, which was once there for St. James Church in Piccadilly, ran out of space when it closed. And these burials had artifacts, pipes, combs, gun flints, musical instruments of sorts. And they're all on a display from the remains that have been carefully removed to a new cemetery.
I'm going to have to go see that next time over there because I have ancestors in that cemetery.
Well, they were in that cemetery.
Right.
But for your family, Fish, they seem to be moving the dead all the time.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Now, Fish, I don't know if you have any family from Ellis Island. My wife's great-grandfather went through there.
Yep.
I don't personally.
My grandmother, she went through there.
Well, the first person to go through Ellis Island back when it opened was a young lady by the name of Annie Moore. And, there's a national parks boat named for her. There are statues named for her. But it was our good friend Megan Smolniak who just about 20 years ago tracked down what happened to Annie. Well, part of that research is now tied into a play.
Isn't that fun? What a great thing.
Well, I think that if you think of all of the stories at Ellis Island, how one person who received a $10 gold piece when she passed through, because she was the first official person, because of that, the family has got together, and in 2008, they finally marked her grave after years of it not being marked in New York at Calvary Cemetery in Queens.
Love that. Great story.
Well, that's what I have from Beantown, but don't forget, go to our website, AmericanAncestors.org, and you can join and save $20 by using the coupon code, as always, which is extreme.
All right, David, thank you so much. We'll talk to you at the back end of the show. And coming up next, my visit with the late Jack Holder from 2021, a survivor from Pearl Harbor. You will want to hear every detail of everything he has to say. It's an incredible story. Jack's going to be missed. Coming up in 3 minutes on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show.
Are you stuck in your genealogy research? Have you hit a brick wall and just can't find a way through? Or maybe you are just getting started and don't know where to begin. The experts at Legacy Tree Genealogists have helped clients in every state and virtually every country in the world to find their missing ancestors and complete their family tree. There is nothing more rewarding than the moment you make a connection and find the missing link to your relatives. And Legacy Tree has been making those connections for clients for over 18 years. Learn more at legacytree.com. Whether you are a beginning researcher or you've been immersed in genealogy for decades, brick walls happen. But with the Legacy Tree network of on-site researchers around the world, you can reach that aha moment where it all comes together and the missing pieces make sense. Learn more about how to work with Legacy Tree Genealogists at legacytree.com. Put your family history in our hands. We do the work, you enjoy the discoveries. Get started at legacytree.com. Visit us online at legacytree.com.
Hi, Genies. Fisher here, and I hear from so many of you all the time that I love all those family stories on Extreme Genes. Where can I find ancestor stories like those? The best answer? Digitized newspapers. And nobody has more digitized newspaper pages than newspapers.com. Newspapers.com has well over 800 million searchable pages from the United States and countries all over the world. Find those valuable obituaries and marriage accounts, often with photographs. Read your ancestors' funny stories, sad stories, and sometimes shocking stories. It was from newspapers.com that I learned about how my grandfather rescued a boy from a flooded lake during World War II. In another account, I learned that my wife's ancestor ran off with the wife of a farmhand and stole over $20,000 in the process. Newspapers.com is like that box of chocolates we always hear about. You never know what you're going to get. What will you find? Sign up now at newspapers.com. Hey, Genies, as we've dug into our family history explorations over the past year, our community at Genealogy and Family History Breakthrough Strategies has taken off. This is where you can meet like-minded genealogists who can help you break through those brick walls and find a whole city behind it, occupied by ancestors whose names you don't even know yet. This is where you can learn from your fellow genies and ask questions, because many in our community have already been into some of the records you're looking for. Genealogy and Breakthrough Strategies is free. What a great place for brainstorming and getting to know other people who totally get your passion for family history research. If you're looking to take the next step in sharpening your skills, here's a great chance to learn from others and give back in areas you've already become expert in. So join us. That page again is Genealogy and Family History Breakthrough Strategies. It's a long name, but we cover a lot of territory. Genealogy and Family History Breakthrough Strategies. And welcome back to America's Family History Show, Extreme Genes and ExtremeGenes.com. It is Fisher here, your radio root sleuth, and what an honor it is for me today to be talking to 99-year-old Jack Holder in Arizona. Jack has written a book called Fear, Adrenaline, and Excitement, covering his military experiences. Jack, welcome to Extreme Genes.
Well, thank you so much. It's my honor to join you.
Well, Jack has quite a history because during the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941, he had, what would you say, a front row seat, Jack?
I definitely had a front row seat. I had the duty that day. It was when the section leader began roll call in our hangar. We heard a fast-moving aircraft, and moments later, a terrible explosion. The hangar beside us blew up. It received the first bomb that fell in Pearl Harbor.
You were right there for the first bomb.
It dropped about 100 yards from me. I was right there.
Oh, my goodness. So the beginning of World War II was 100 yards from you.
Yeah, that's correct.
Wow. And you were, as I understand it, on Ford Island?
I was on Ford Island, yes. Ford Island is a small island right inside Pearl Harbor itself.
Mm-hmm. And I understand that you actually got really close to one of these planes that I guess was strafing?
Well, he got pretty close to us. It so happens that when we run outside and seen the aircraft overhead with the rising sun and signal in the air, it so happened that one of my shipmates remembered there was a sewer line under construction behind our hangar. He says, "Let's go for the ditch. Follow me." We all ran, jumped in it, sat there clinging to each other. And, of course, one of the pilots seen us. He circled straight to the ditch, missed us by probably 3 feet. He hit the dirt piled up beside the ditch.
Oh, my gosh. And as I understand, you were actually so close as he came over that you could see his face.
I could see his face. I could see his unbuttoned helmet flapping in the breeze and all those big, shining white teeth.
Really?
I guess he was pretty happy.
He looked like he was enjoying himself.
I think so.
Wow. How long had you been at Pearl Harbor before all this happened?
Just 6 days short of 1 year.
So as you were in this ditch after this initial attack, what happened then? Where did you go?
Well, this was a two-wave attack, as you well know, and I'm not sure how long we were in the ditch, but it was an hour and 15 minutes between the two waves. Shortly after the first wave was over, we'd come out of the ditch, of course, and we started separating aircraft. We had 12 aircraft parked between the two hangars, VP-21 and VP-23, my hangar. Half of them were on fire from the first bomb that fell. We started separating burning aircraft from aircraft that weren't damaged, and I was ordered by the leading chief to grab 2 more sailors and go in the hangar and get the squadron commander's aircraft ready for flight. We got the engines ready, buttoned them up. The aircraft was rolled out, refueled, loaded with 2 1,000-pound bombs. The captain and his crew flew for 19 hours looking for the Japanese fleet, but found nothing. But the devastating thing that I seen, I could look down Battleship Row and see the Arizona, the Nevada, West Virginia, Tennessee, California, Utah. I've seen the Oklahoma turn turtle up, seen all these ships on fire, all sinking. I I seen gentlemen jumping in the water, trying to swim through water covered in burning oil. A lot of them died in the water. Some of them died when they reached the beach. And, of course, some of them made it. But it was a sight I'll never forget.
I can only imagine. How many days did you remain at Pearl after the attack on December 7th?
Well, the normal routine of search and flight training, everything, resumed immediately after the raid. This continued until Midway.
I see. So you stayed there. You were still based there.
Oh, yeah.
And so you were a pilot. Had you received your pilot training before December 7th, or was that just a continuation after the attack?
No, in the military, I was a flight engineer. I went to flight school after I got out of the Navy and was an airline pilot, but I was strictly a flight engineer in the Navy.
At that point. So as I understand it, Midway, of course, was not that long after Pearl Harbor. It was just a matter of several months, and it was obviously very important because you had 4 Japanese aircraft carriers trying to lure in what they thought was what was left of the United States Navy. They were going to attack it, take over Midway, and then they were in a position where they could have attacked the West Coast. But we, of course, intercepted all their messages, so we knew what the plan was. And so we had our own carriers out there that they didn't even know existed at that point, and you were part of the Battle of Midway.
Let me run through that complete story of that. Immediately after the Jimmy Little raid Tokyo, Naval Intelligence began receiving numerous coded messages using the letters AF and AO. We'd understood part of the Japanese code. We knew that one of these stood for the Aleutian Islands and the other for Midway, but we could not tell which was which. Our Chief of Intelligence told Admiral Emmons, he says, I've devised a plan to ascertain what they mean. He says, we can send out an uncoded message saying Midway has just had a freshwater condenser failure. Nimitz said, send it. The Japanese took the bait. They sent out a coded message saying AF has just had a freshwater condenser failure. Nimitz then sent a small task force to the Aleutian in disguise, sent the rest of the fleet to Midway, positioning the aircraft carriers in one position, the rest of the fleet in another. My squadron left Pearl Harbor on May 28, 1942, began our search for the Japanese fleet. June the 3rd, we found them 450 miles northeast of Midway, proceeding towards Midway under a weather front.
And when you say we found them, you were part of the group that did find them.
I was in the aircraft that made the report of their position.
That is amazing to me. And it's a little personal, too, because I had an uncle, Don Olson, who served on the USS New Orleans at the Battle of Midway, and I've reviewed his naval records and the experience at that time. And it was a world-changing battle, the Battle of Midway, because it protected the West Coast. It pushed the Japanese back. I believe they were also planning on attacking Australia. And this really,
that's right.
This was kind of the end of their pushing east and their aggression in that direction. They had to go into a more defensive position after this, right?
That's right. They wanted to control all the shipping lanes for the Philippines.
Do you think back on this, Jack? I mean, you're 99 years old now. You must look back on this 80 years ago. It seems, I'm sure, like another lifetime ago.
Well, it seemed like an awful long time, but I remember it like it was yesterday.
I bet it does. It's life-defining when you go through something like that, yes?
That's very true, yes.
How many of your friends from those times are still with us?
Recently, I have a very good friend here, a Rear Admiral by the name of Jim Simons. He had some contacts, and I come up with a group of at least 30 or 40 names that I remembered in my squadron, and they did research on these, and they could not make contact with a single one.
So you're it?
Well, I'm the only one in Phoenix. I think there's only 2 of us in Arizona. You know, you're talking about Australia a while ago. I've been back to Pearl Harbor on December the 7th several times, taken back by the Greatest Generation Foundation. The president is a gentleman by the name of Timothy Davis. He's Australian. When I first met him, I says, how come you Australian got mixed up in all of this? He said, Jack, if it hadn't have been for you boys, Australia would be speaking Japanese.
That's absolutely true. You did a lot of stuff. You also fought in the Atlantic Theater.
I was transferred to back to San Diego, went through training in the B-24 Liberator. In April 1943, flew 56 missions of anti-submarine patrol over the English Channel and the Bay of Biscay, which is the western coast of France.
That's unbelievable. And I'm seeing a number here that you flew 315 Navy missions. How is that even possible?
Well, I don't know. I just, when they say go, you got to go.
You go and you go. But I mean, really, what were the odds of survival with that number of missions under your belt?
Well, I can tell you this. Every time you board that aircraft, you say, well, maybe this might be the last one. You never know.
I can only imagine. 2 distinguished Flying Cross medals, and then afterwards you worked as a corporate pilot. What a life.
Yeah, that was a charter airline, Los Angeles Air Service in California for 7 years. Then I went to a Union Oil Company as a corporate pilot for another 10 years.
Well, what a piece of family history you've written for your family, Jack, and this has been a real honor to talk to you. Did your dad serve in the service?
My father was a World War I veteran. He never talked too much about it, but he did tell me he spent a year crawling through the mud in France.
Oh, wow. That had to be just as difficult as everything you went through.
That's true, yeah.
Unbelievable. And you turn 100 in December.
In December will be 100, yes.
Unbelievable. He is Jack Holder. He's from Phoenix, Arizona, a survivor of the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. At Ford Island, and actually was able to look right into the face of one of the Japanese pilots who was strafing him and his buddies. What a life, what a story, Jack. You've written this book about your life. What's it called?
Called Fear, Adrenaline, and Excitement.
Did you come up with that title?
Yes, I did.
And what does it mean to you?
Well, it means exactly what I experienced. There's a great difference in being afraid and the moment of fear. If a person is afraid, it creates bad decisions. But a moment of fear tells the adrenaline to start flowing, then it changes to excitement.
So where can people get this book?
On Amazon and my website, jackholder.org.
What a life. There he is, the late Jack Holder, who has passed at 101. We'll be back with more in 5 minutes on Extreme Genes. You know, as a New Englander, I love what happens every time there's some kind of special anniversary date from the Revolutionary War. Hey, it's Fisher here, and I'm back on Extreme Genes with my next guest, Lindsay Fulton from the New England Historic Genealogical Society and AmericanAncestors.org. She is the Vice President of Research and Library Services there. And Lindsay, this is an exciting thing coming up here because, you know, we just got over the centennial of World War I here just a few years ago. Now we're kind of rolling into the 250th anniversary of the Revolution, but there are a lot of things that led up to it as well. And so now there's this big celebration going on with the Boston Tea Party, and a whole new society is being built around it. Welcome to the show. Tell us all about this.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Yeah, we are getting geared up to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the Boston Tea Party, which happened December 16th, 1773. So we will commemorate that in this upcoming month of December. And to prepare for that, American Ancestors has partnered with the Boston Tea Party Ships and Museum to create a member society. And I hesitate to call it a lineage society because you can join under several levels of membership.
Okay, well, let's talk about this a little bit because I know that the Ships and Museum in Boston really is a great education source for a lot of people. A lot of kids, a lot of families go there. I went there myself about 5 or 6 years ago, and I got to throw a tea bag into the harbor, as you say back there in Boston, and then they pulled it back in, which was kind of shocking to me. But nonetheless, it's a lot of fun and very near the actual site of the Boston Tea Party. And of course, this was one of the things that ultimately led to the British blockading Boston Harbor, and that caused a lot of problems that kind of changed the world.
It did. They didn't appreciate it.
No.
Them being the British. They didn't appreciate it very much.
Exactly.
But we're very proud of it in Boston. We love that people can come and participate in throwing tea in the harbor, even if we do bring it back in after they're done.
So this is part of this big umbrella thing that the Massachusetts Historical Society is doing called Rev 250, Revolutionary War 250th Anniversary Celebration, Rev 250. And this is just one more thing that's going to be under this. But I love this society thing coming together, especially the different levels that you have for membership in it. And it's really kind of fun. David and I talked about it a little bit last week. You've got 3 levels. Let's talk about each one. What's the first one?
Sure. So the first one is what we're calling a lineage member. And that is reserved for anyone in a traditional lineage society way can prove lineal descent from someone who either threw tea in the harbor, was a member of the Boston Sons of Liberty, was a member of the Loyal Nine, participated in the North End Caucus. They were a member at St. Andrew's Lodge, which is the Mason Lodge that's in Boston. If they were one of the guys who volunteered to watch the ships, or if they were a signer of the November 1773 petition to town selectmen.
Wow.
And the reason that we have so many of these categories, well, it's twofold. One, the men who were participating, and I say men because we don't have any evidence that there were any females that participated in this activity, but the men who were participating either politically or who actually threw tea in the harbor were really providing the same type of boycott and were protesting in the same way. So we really want to give a nod towards those individuals as well as the men who were throwing tea in the harbor.
Okay. So there's lineage.
Yep, there's lineage. So the other issue, too, just to make a quick point, is that after the Boston Tea Party happened, people weren't exactly raising their hand the next day to say, I participated in that activity, you know?
Right.
So it was not frowned upon, but you didn't want to raise your hand about it. So it wasn't until years and years later that men started to say, I did that, I did it. And then that's when we start to have some actual record keeping of that participation. Now, the problem being, if you were 50 when you participated, most likely you didn't make it to the point where you could have admitted that you did it.
Yeah, good point.
So that's another thing to just kind of keep in mind, which is why we wanted to increase the number of people who could apply under that membership level.
Sure, that makes sense. All right, level number 2.
Level number 2 is an eyewitness to history. And what we mean by eyewitness to history is if you were a resident of Boston in 1773 and you're a descendant of that person, you can apply under them. And the reason being, if you were a resident of Boston in 1773, you knew darn well that the Boston Tea Party happened.
Yep.
You likely knew someone who participated. You saw it happen. You went to the meeting house. You were involved in some way, even if it was a tertiary involvement.
Well, it's eyewitness. It's eyewitness. Yeah. That's straightforward. Okay, yeah.
And the other part that will be included under that is people who maybe have a published family history that says there was a person who was, quote unquote, participating or was involved or there that day. They would fall underneath this umbrella with a little grain of salt there. So, we were talking about this before. Your wife is a descendant of someone who claims to have been there, but he was from Virginia.
Yeah.
I mean, likely that person was not there. We're not going to take that kind of lineage. But if someone was living in New England and they say that they were there, they could have been there. It's really hard for us to negate that. So that would be a person who could apply under eyewitness to history.
Okay.
My third favorite category, and the reason it's my favorite category is that I don't have any early Revolutionary War ancestry that's from New England.
Okay.
So I would not be able to apply to this member society. So we created a category called co-conspirator, which I think is very clever.
Yes.
And the folks who can apply under that are just interested in the Boston Tea Party and they want to be involved. They want to be involved in Rev 250. They want to be invited to the events and that type of thing. So they can apply that way.
Wow.
As a co-conspirator.
I mean, you're covering a lot of people here. Not only the folks on the list that you're going through and I know trying to verify as best you can, but also those who were just there at the time. So it's really open to a lot of people, especially in your area. And I would imagine a lot of people just from the New England area as a whole. So this is very fun. Where do people go to sign up for this and apply for membership?
So they can go to the Boston Tea Party Ships and Museum website. There's a way to apply on their homepage. There's also a website that we created on the American Ancestors side that cobbles together all of the resources that we have specific to the Boston Tea Party and Boston residents at the time. It has webinars, it has links to databases, to books. It's fantastic. You should check out americanancestors.org/Boston Tea Party.
Okay.
And all of those resources will be right in the same spot.
And that would help with the application, obviously. And you got to figure out which level you want to join. And is there a cost difference between the different levels?
So to apply, it's a $400 application fee.
Okay.
And unlike other lineage societies where you get like a certificate, you're going to get a certificate with this, but you also get a whole bunch of other cool things. You'll get a copy of Benjamin Carp's Defiance of the Patriots, which is the best historical treatment, I think, of the Boston Tea Party and the events leading up to it.
Okay.
You'll get a replica tea chest that has 5 historic teas. So it's teas that would have likely been dumped in the harbor that day. They're delicious. They're much different tasting than your, Lipton tea that you have nowadays. And the chest itself is a replica of the Robinson tea chest, which is something that's on display at the Boston Tea Party Ships and Museum. It was washed ashore.
Yeah, it's like the last one, right?
Yeah, I think it's the only one that exists. So it's a replica of that. So it's fun to have as part of your collection. You also get a bunch of discounts on the gift shop, and you get invited to member events, webinars, and a quarterly newsletter as well.
Wow, that's a lot of stuff. And that sounds like a lot of fun, especially as we get deeper and deeper into Rev 250 and closer to the 250th anniversary of the Boston Tea Party coming up in December in the Haba. So, hey, thanks for talking to us, Lindsay, and getting us this information.
Thank you very much. We welcome all applicants.
All right. And coming up next, David returns as we go through another round of Ask Us Anything on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show. Hi, Genies. Fisher here, and I hear from so many of you all the time that I love all those family stories on Extreme Genes. Where can I find ancestor stories like those? The best answer? Digitized newspapers. And nobody has more digitized newspaper pages than newspapers.com. Newspapers.com has well over 800 million searchable pages from the United States and countries all over the world. Find those valuable obituaries and marriage accounts, often with photographs. Read your ancestors' funny stories, sad stories, and sometimes shocking stories. It was from newspapers.com that I learned about how my grandfather rescued a boy from a flooded lake during World War II. In another account, I learned that my wife's ancestor ran off with the wife of a farmhand and stole over $20,000 in the process. Newspapers.com is like that box of chocolates we always hear about. You never know what you're going to get. What will you find? Sign up now at newspapers.com.
Are you stuck in your genealogy research? Have you hit a brick wall and just can't find a way through? Or maybe you are just getting started and don't know where to begin. The experts at Legacy Tree Genealogists have helped clients in every state and virtually every country in the world to find their missing ancestors and complete their family tree. There is nothing more rewarding than the moment you make a connection and find the missing link to your relatives. And Legacy Tree has been making those connections for clients for over 18 years. Learn more at legacytree.com. Whether you are a beginning researcher or you've been immersed in genealogy for decades, brick walls happen. But with the Legacy Tree network of on-site researchers around the world, you can reach that aha moment where it all comes together and the missing pieces make sense. Learn more about how to work with Legacy Tree Genealogists at legacytree.com. Put your family history in our hands. We do the work, you enjoy the discoveries. Get started at legacytree.com. Visit us online at legacytree.com.
Hey, Genies. As we've dug into our family history explorations over the past year, our community at Genealogy and Family History Breakthrough Strategies has taken off. This is where you can meet like-minded genealogists who can help you break through those brick walls and find a whole city behind it, occupied by ancestors whose names you don't even know yet. This is where you can learn from your fellow Genies and ask questions, because many in our community have already been into some of the records you're looking for. Genealogy Genealogy and Breakthrough Strategies is free. What a great place for brainstorming and getting to know other people who totally get your passion for family history research. If you're looking to take the next step in sharpening your skills, here's a great chance to learn from others and give back in areas you've already become expert in. So join us. That page again is Genealogy and Family History Breakthrough Strategies. It's a long name, but we cover a lot of territory. Genealogy and Family History Breakthrough Strategies. All right, back for Ask Us Anything on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show, and extremegenes.com. Fish here. David Allen Lambert is back from Boston. And Dave, our first question this week comes from Jolie at North Carolina State. And Jolie says, guys, my great uncle was said to have been dating the runner-up for the Miss America contest in 1937. Is there some way I can figure out who this was? He went off to war and never saw her again. Thanks, Jolie. Oh, that's fun. Yeah.
That is fun. Well, right away, the first thing that comes to mind, newspapers.
Yeah.
And of course, on Ancestry, you can search newspapers backwards and forwards. In 1937 Miss America pageant, well, they've got to list the winner. And they'll probably list the runner-up.
Yeah, and I would think, too, there could be photographs of that person in there. And I would imagine, because it is Miss America, that you're going to have people from different locations. So if there's any doubt about who the person is, where they're from, would certainly seal the deal for you, and knowing, okay, well, your great uncle lived in Michigan, and the first or second runner-up was the only one from Michigan, so it must be that person. And then you can take that information and start developing that.
Well, it's a shame that it was 1937 and you're looking in 2023 because it was 86 years ago. I can tell you the winner was a 17-year-old by the name of Betty Cooper.
Okay.
She was in the 11th Miss America pageant. She only died, ready for this, Fish, in 2017. She was born in 1920.
Wow, that's a long life.
That is a very long life. And who knows, maybe you could find the runner-up is still alive in a nursing home with lots of stories for you.
I doubt that, but maybe a child or a grandchild, right?
That's very true. Well, another place you might try that may have the records and at least a listing is the website missamerica.org, where they have the history of the contest going back to 1921 when the Boardwalk on Atlantic City hosted the first pageant.
Yeah.
It's over 100 years old and still going strong.
You know, Dave, one of the people who was most associated with the Miss America pageant was Bert Parks.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember him? He was there forever.
I do. He was Miss America for, many years, probably over a quarter century, I would imagine.
Yeah, well, he wasn't Miss America himself, but he was he was the MC for that show. And back in the 1930s, and I only learned this a few years ago, my uncle had a band. His name was Scott Fisher. It was Scott Fisher and his orchestra. My dad was in it. My dad was the music arranger for it. But they had an announcer that came along for a lot of their radio shows and appearances, and it was Bert Parks. So he's a real young guy at this time. And the story goes that he used to come up underneath the chairs of the musicians while they were playing at these things and tie their shoelaces together.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. He was considered quite a joker, did stuff with the lights that kind of came on at the moment that the showgirls who were part of the whole thing made a certain move. I mean, he had a real reputation among the band members. And then, of course, he went on to the Miss America pageant. I don't think he was doing that there, but nonetheless, really interesting stuff. I mean, there are so many stories that come out of that pageant. Scandals like the Vanessa Williams thing back in, I think it was 1984, when nude pictures of her were published without her permission. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. But I love this question because it really is a family history question.
Yep, it is. Well, if you're related to Bert Parks or the runner-up, let us know.
Yeah, from 1937. So great question, Jolie, and thanks for thinking of us. And hopefully you can research that and find something on that. It's always kind of fun to look into those little rabbit holes like that. Coming up next, we have another question from someone who's just discovered DNA. and wants to find out more about matching. So we'll talk about that coming up next when we return in 3 minutes on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show. All right, here we go. Final question this week on Ask Us Anything on America's Family History Show, Extreme Genes and ExtremeGenes.com. David, this is from Cape May, New Jersey. April's writing, Fish and Dave, I finally discovered DNA matches on my Ancestry account. All I ever knew of before was ethnicity, but thanks to your show, I know a little more. And I'm seeing lots of names of relatives I don't know. Can you give me a short version of what to do next? Boy, can we do that in this time? I think we can.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously, you can really do a lot with color coding, so start picking the people you know right away.
Yep. Let's talk about that. Yeah, if you're on Ancestry, you can color code which branch of the family's different matches come from. And so if you come across somebody you don't know, hit the button called Shared Matches, which, by the way, is really the most important button on the whole thing. You're going to find that some of the people that come through a certain branch are already color-coded for that, so you know the person that you don't know probably also comes from that branch. And so you can start then to research them a little bit more, maybe figure out where they come from. One other thing you could do that would be really helpful is to go back to your ancestors, say 3-4 generations, and start pulling down all their descendants, because you might start to recognize some names that way.
Right. Both my parents are gone before DNA testing became standard. And so now that I can see my dad's side, where I'm getting my ethnicity from, and my mother's side, I can look at that, but I can also see the cousins that I share on that side too. So that might help a little bit as well. Yeah,
absolutely. That's true. They've only recently added that, where it's separated where you get your DNA from, whether it's from your mother's side or your father's side. Yeah. The other thing that you can do that's kind of fun is once you start connecting with some of these people, you can start messaging some of them, those you know and those you don't know, and see if they might be willing to share some information with you on those various lines that you developed, because there are really like a handful of things you can do with this, with the matching. Number one, you can use it to find people who have a tree similar to yours, but maybe a tree that goes farther back, and you can extend your lines. That's kind of the Shangri-La for many of us. The second thing you can do is prove your paper trail. Make sure that everything is the way it appears on paper, because this is where we get all the surprises that we hear about all the time. This comes from DNA testing. The other thing you can do is track down cousins, because these are people with photographs and documents and heirlooms, things that you may have never seen before, and it's a great way to find them. And then you want to try to reach out and find them personally. Whether you do it through a messaging system on Ancestry or 23andMe or wherever else you may be doing it, you could also do that by just trying to track them down the standard way, like whitepages.com or something like that. But reaching out to people and finding things, I mean, just reveals unbelievable stuff. So there's that. And you can also kind of figure out where some of the various interesting lines of ethnicity may be coming from through which branch.
It's true. Well, I think with genealogy, I mean, it's one thing is like, you're never going to become a millionaire with your own data. Share it. Yeah. And if you share it, you're going to make more connections. And it's all about getting the story out there, finding those relatives, and reconnecting.
So that is the short course for you, April. So good luck with that, and keep up the good work. It's a time-consuming thing. It's going to take a lot of effort, and there's a little bit of a learning curve in there, but you can do this. So thanks for the question. David, thank you, of course, for your part in the show this week, and we'll talk to you again soon.
All right, my friend. Until later.
All right. Thanks so much. And thanks for joining us. Thanks to Lindsay Fulton from the New England Historic Genealogical Society at AmericanAncestors.org for coming on and talking about this new Boston Tea Party Society that's coming together. If you have a part in that, you may want to hear this again. Just catch the podcast, of course. You can do it on all the usual places: Apple Media, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and ExtremeGenes.com. We'll talk to you again next week. Thanks for joining us. And remember, as far as everyone knows, we're a nice, normal family.